Good morning, guys. My name is Jason. I'm the founder of Distress Loan Advisors. I've been helping people through SBA offer and compromise and offer and compromise related matters since 2009. If you want to book some time with me, there is a link below in the description. You can select a day and time that works for you right off my calendar. Today, I want to talk about fraud and EIDL loans and to a lesser extent PPP loans. There was a report that the IG or Inspector General put out sort of summarizing some really interesting statistics about EIDL loans and PPP loans and the amount of fraud that they've tried to identify and that they're estimating. And it's pretty mind-blowing. I guess not super surprising given the fact that their underwriting standards were basically non-existent. So as long as you had a business that was open and operating, they more or less just threw money at you. And the number of people who tell me, I borrowed an initial amount and then they came back to me and offered me more money, it's pretty staggering. I understand what they were trying to do. During COVID, they were trying to keep businesses from closing, keep them afloat. So first they came out with the PPP loans, which were completely forgivable. Once that money dried up, then they move on to the EIDL loans, or economic injury disaster loans. And those were intended to be repaid, but when you don't have underwriting standards, what do you expect? I couldn't find the statistic in black and white, but I definitely heard that at this point, about half of these EIDL loans are either in default or in some sort of deferment or hardship accommodation status. If that's true, that's unbelievable. I mean, half. I mean, we're talking about, I think it was almost 4 million loans. So that means like close to 2 million are either just plain out in default or they're in hardship, which means they're barely paying anything, and chances are a lot of those will never be able to repay. Anyway, so I just wanted to share, because a lot of people who call me, they're concerned about being audited or having the SBA track them down and accuse them of basically misusing the funds. And so I just wanted to throw out some information just so people understand how the Inspector General was trying to identify potential fraud. And as you'll see, none of it really has to do with, at this point, auditing borrowers' use of proceeds. It's actually more basic than that. And there's like 10 of them. I scribbled some of them down just so you can get an idea of what kind of things they're looking at. And once you hear them, you'll realize, like, okay, that's actual fraud, as opposed to, well, I bought this piece of machinery for my business, is that okay? It's light years away from that. So they're looking at IP addresses where people applied. So in other words, your computer or the network that you're on at home has its own internet protocol. And so they can see if duplicate loan applications came through the same IP address. So if you're a fraudster, you could apply 5 or 6 times with 5 or 6 different names, but they would pick that up because they'd see the same IP address. So unless it's like a computer lab somewhere, it would seem a little fishy that people would be applying from the same devices or from the same internet connection. Similarly, they identified duplicate EIN numbers. So I guess some people are brazen enough that they simply just applied multiple times for the same business. Likewise, they had funds going to the same bank account. So that's easy enough to flag. Same thing with phone numbers. Like, the crooks really were, not very creative, and nor did it seem like they were interested in really covering their tracks. They were pretty blatant about it. So I think those are pretty easy to catch. Now, there are a couple others that are a little bit different than that. One of the red flags that the IG looks for is for PPP loans, if you did not seek to get it repaid, nor did you make any payments on it. So in other words, if you're a fraudster who had no intention of paying back your loan, you would just take the money and you wouldn't apply to have it forgiven, nor would you make a payment. So That's one way that they're catching people. And then, there's good old-fashioned blabbermouths. So they have a hotline, and people would call and complain, and presumably because people are saying, "Oh, I got this money, I'm not paying it back, and look, I got free money," and probably piss some people off. And then one more thing that they flagged was if you're a sole proprietor or independent contractor, that was indicative of potential fraud, because obviously you didn't even have to form any sort of legal entity at that point. You're just a sole proprietor, which anybody off the street can claim to be a sole proprietor. So it would be hard to separate that from just a regular person, as opposed to a business where if you have an S corp and LLC, that would have taken a lot more work to form, and they could see when that would have formed. So those are the I guess the red flags that the IG has been looking for. And again, you'll notice, they're not auditing use of proceeds initially. They're just sort of identifying, this potential fraud. Now, let's talk about some of the numbers. So they've identified over $200 billion in potential fraud, and that constitutes 17% of all the funds that were given out for PPP and EIDL. 17%, it's a little less than 1 in 5, but that's a lot of waste. We're talking about, so there were 4.5 million potentially fraudulent loans out of the 22 million that they gave. 4.5 million out of 22. This was, and they called it at the beginning. I remember them saying this is ripe for fraud. Anytime there's a disaster and they're trying to get aid at, you are going to have fraudsters. But we're talking about $1.2 trillion, and they're saying that 200 or more of that is fraudulent. So, there's been some enforcement around this, and so people have asked, can I go to jail? And the answer is, they have arrested people. They're not going to send you to jail because you didn't pay the money back. They're going to send you to jail if you committed fraud. So through May 2023, there were 1,000 indictments, over 800 arrests, over 500 convictions, 90,000 leads, and 250,000 hotline complaints. So, when you hear that numbers, it sort of says to me, okay, fine, there's 1,000 indictments and 800 arrests, but there's 250,000 complaints. So it's going to be very, very difficult for them to work through all those. And you figure the more time that goes on, the more likely it is people are going to, skip town, or if they're from another country, disappear or whatever. But those are some amazing statistics. So anyway, there you go. That's a little bit on EIDL loans and PPP loans and fraud. So if you committed fraud, I cannot help with that. Sorry. You're going to probably want to talk to a criminal attorney if you've been arrested. What I can help with is if you have an EIDL loan that you legitimately took and you used it for business purposes and you can't pay it back, I can talk you through your options. As of now, today is Friday, October 13th. I'm still not aware of anyone successfully settling an EIDL loan, so that's not an option, but I can certainly talk to you about what you can expect if you default from the SBA, from the Treasury, and what your options might be. So that's it. Thanks for checking in, and we'll see you on the next one. And I do have one favor. If you enjoy these videos and you think there's value here, there is a subreddit called EIDL PPP, or it's PPP EIDL. I always forget. But there are people in there who appear to have shills plugging for their consulting services. So if anyone hangs out on there and sees anyone asking for help, I always appreciate a free shout out. You can link to my website. And the more business I have, the more I can keep all these resources available for free without having to put information behind a paywall. So I'll just put it out there. Anyway, thanks for checking in, and we'll see you next time.